Bold leaders, no buzzwords, no BS. This is Mastering Workplace Culture, real talk on crafting workplace cultures that deliver results. Each episode, we go beyond corporate speak and talk with leaders who've actually done it. Those who've faced breakdowns, made bold moves, and built organizations where respect and results carry equal weight. If you're ready to challenge assumptions, gain actionable inspiration from proven mentors, and build a workplace culture that actually works, this podcast is for you.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Mastering Workplace Culture. I am your co-host, Chris Edmonds, and my other co-host is...
Hi, I'm Mark Babbitt.
And our fabulous guest today is the amazing Tamara McCleary, who we've known and worked with for a while. She was just a child, as we were never children, Mark. We're too old for that. But let me give you a little bit of background on Tamara. She is the CEO of the global tech company Thulium, which harnesses artificial intelligence, machine learning, data, and analytics to drive smart social in the B2B and enterprise space. She's also a technology futurist, inspirational keynote speaker, and serves as a unique advisor to leading global tech companies such as Amazon, Oracle, SAP, and many more. She's an advisor and crew member of Proudly Human Off-World projects, which I'm quite fascinated at, but we may not get to that today. She's host of SAP podcast Tech Unknown and Better Together Customer Conversations, so she knows how to do podcasting. It is like second or even third nature at this stage. As our conversation with Tamara today will establish, her focus is currently academic research in science, technology, ethics, and public purpose, desperately needed in today's times. And as if Tamara's resume and accomplishments weren't enough, she recently chose to continue her graduate education, and not just anywhere. She chose to attend Harvard. So, Tamara, welcome.
Thank you. And wow, thank you for that amazing introduction.
Well, and like Mark and I say, well, I wrote it. You did it just like it, right? So that works just fine. Mark, would you mind starting off our convo with Tamara?
Well, I'd love to. Welcome, Tamara. We're thrilled to have your voice on Mastering Workplace Culture. Thanks for joining us. You said that in a small company, culture could be defined as simply as how people treat each other. How would you describe the culture at Thulium, and where do your values really show up in your team's day-to-day behaviors?
That's such a great question. And years ago, we won't say how many, right, Chris? When I asked Chris to come in and actually help me to carve out and how to cultivate a dream culture, because as you may know, and many who listen in, I have actually been in environments where the culture was quite sick, and it affected me because we spend how many of our hours of the day working. And I wanted to do something different. Kind of like when I have my company, I want it to be different. I want it to have a healthy, vibrant culture. And I think how I describe Thulium's culture now is calm for sure, very candid. Definitely. And I know our folks listening in, because they will when you post this, will definitely agree. It's candid and deeply human, which is important to me because now we're in a world that's often frantic and quite honestly performative. And I think that we have a luxury that we're small. And so, but also because we're small, culture is not something on a slide deck, right? It really is how we treat each other on an ordinary Tuesday, especially when things are going sideways, which they often can, especially if you have clients. And I know you have clients too, things can go sideways. So you really can see our values in those micro moments. The tone of, say, an email, a Slack message, the tone one takes with another during, say, an under pressure type of launch, a teammate stepping in quietly, maybe to cover for someone who's feeling depleted, or a project lead saying, hey, let's pause, let's regroup, instead of pushing people to white knuckle their way through. So I think it is in those micro moments that I would describe our culture as being that calm, candid, deeply human. And I do think the reason it's developed that way is that, I know we will get to this later, but my clinical and trauma background, I think, have really shaped that desire to not always be in a state of emergency. I have watched what fear and shame do to judgment and performance. So we optimize at Thulium for psychological safety. And I think that's really important. And clarity, because people need to know what is expected of them in order to feel safe. And they need to feel safe to say, I don't know, especially nowadays. How does anyone know everything right now? Everything is changing so rapidly, and there's new apps and new tools and new ways of doing things that it's impossible to always know. So I think you have to be safe in your culture to go, I don't know, but I'll find out, or I need help, asking for help when you need it. And when mistakes happen, focusing on fixing the system rather than blame and shame of a person. For me, that's what it means to have a healthy culture. High quality work, I think, is always accomplished in a way that protects people's dignity, definitely their brains, right? And not focusing on just the week's metrics.
Well, and you're right. That was a while ago when I got a chance to come in and learn a bit more. And you've had some players change, evolve. The structure of the business has grown like crazy, but not necessarily with multiple team members so much as your kind of ability for that team to deal with a lot more customers and a lot more customer needs. But do you have a story or two that you're willing to share that can really give us a bit of some insight on the day-to-day with psychological safety, clarity, and almost what I heard in your description was kind of cooperative interaction across the board? So a story or two, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think of our culture, it's not a mission statement. And I wonder if anyone these days even believes mission statements. Do you remember when they used to post them, and they were in like a frame on the wall and
painted on?
Many still do, yeah.
Many do.
And does anyone ever really believe those? I think they're just a waste of time, because you have to actually act. You would be the mission, okay? But I don't think of our culture as a mission statement. I think of those micro moments I was talking about. So an example would be that one that stands out for me is we had a major program with a client that had an error that slipped through. Now, mind you, we're human beings, so errors do happen, unfortunately. But this one should have been caught earlier. It really should have. And instead of jumping in and reacting to who missed this, what we did is we pulled the team together and asked, where did our process break down? Like, let's huddle, let's figure out where this process broke down. And actually, because of that, the person closest to it felt safe enough to say, hey, guys, that was me. I think I dropped the ball on this one. And I felt like they were able to do that because they felt safe. They knew there wasn't going to be the shaming, no public flogging of them. And so what we did is we fixed the issue, changed our documentation of how we were going to do this process in the future to fill in that gap, and adjusted our checklist. So I think it's these types of debriefs that we have that say more about our culture than any sort of values poster. I really do believe that it's important to demonstrate that we care about learning, because that's how we prevent errors in the future, is we have to learn and move forward. So I really believe in this prevention far more than blame. And another kind of moment I absolutely love this, is when someone on our team proactively just offers to take something off of someone else's plate when they see that this person is stretched. That just fills me with, I can't even describe the feeling of just pride that somebody is willing to take on extra, because our team members work hard. There's nobody that's just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. And so when you see this in action, without having being asked, without, getting an award for the, top employee of the week or something, they just do it. They're taking responsibility for one another's bandwidth and one another's well-being. And I think that our culture is made visible through these small actions that happen on a daily basis.
Well, I have to say one of our prep calls and check-in calls, which we don't have enough of because all three of us are busy. But Tamara, you reached out and said, I need to move this. One of my team members is ill unexpectedly, and we've got some client things happening today, and I'm jumping in to do it. Now, even in a small company, a CEO jumping in to do literal face-to-face, daily tasks is unusual. But that to me was a reflection of the culture that you guys are building and sustaining.
We do. I love our family that we have as a company. And I know it would be really impossible to feel this way and this tight and connected if we were an enterprise. In that place, you'd have to just look at your teams. But that is the beauty, I would say, of having a small firm, is that I am a CEO that takes out the trash if it needs to be taken out. Because it's a roll up your sleeves. We're a team. We are a team. And it doesn't matter the structure of the hierarchy. We are a team. And we definitely could not function if we didn't have that team mentality. And lucky for me, I feel so blessed to have team members that actually share that vision. And as you know, Chris, I didn't initially start with team members that had all that same vision. And it takes a while, I think, to find out who is a good fit and who maybe would not enjoy being a part of this very collective process that we have. So you find that over time and you fine tune it. And I think that it's just a real blessing to have these types of people now within our organization, because they have your back and they know you have their back. And that's really, really important.
Well, Tamara, as you're running this small team, your team by design works with some very large enterprise clients. So you've seen the result of your intentional culture work. You've also seen the culture at some of these bigger clients. So I want to ask you, what could some of those bigger clients learn from your small team when it comes to culture? What could they do, even though they have thousands of employees, to better improve their workplace?
That's such a great question, actually, because first I'll say, because we are in a small firm, I can't hide from my culture, right? So if I'm inconsistent or disrespectful on Monday, it's going to show up in our work by Friday. And so this kind of immediacy really forces all of us in our org to be deliberate about norms, how we give feedback, how we talk about clients and each other when no one's watching. And I think that's really important. Our words matter. What larger organizations can borrow is obviously not our size, but our mindset. So think of each team as a mini culture lab. So you don't have to change 50,000 people, overnight. And you could start with one team and make behaviors explicit. How do we handle mistakes? How do we set boundaries? How do we talk about results and respect in the same breath? When leaders treat a team as a lab for respect and results, they can demonstrate that the company's culture is not just a slogan, right? It's an actual way of operating that actually improves performance.
Well, I would love to dig a little bit deeper into some of your history. You already admitted that you've got trauma and clinical nursing experience from early career. So how did that experience shape your views on psychological safety in a workplace that may not be a hospital or a life flight helicopter, et cetera? And how does that help you lead your team today?
Yeah, what's interesting is I can never separate those early experiences with how it shaped my whole life. Probably because it started when I was only, 21 years of age. And so my career launched right away into trauma, lifelike, intensive care, oncology, where the stakes are literally like life and death. And so it did shape me as a person too. And in that environment, I learned real fast that people cannot do their best when they're scared, they're afraid of humiliation. In an emergency situation like a cardiac arrest, calm, clear communication, it serves best, because in a panic, or if you're blaming, you're flipping out, it's really dangerous because somebody could die. So I believe years of high stakes, high adrenaline experiences absolutely baked into me how I lead. And I see my role as the person who regulates a room, not escalates it. And I remember this from patient care. When you're coming into a room, you were bringing an energy with you. And it's really important, whether it's high stakes emergency or it's high stakes adrenaline, because a client considers everything to be a rush.
Top priority.
Right? Funny how that works, right? But they're both adrenaline states. And for me, it's always respond versus react. And psychological safety is not a nice to have for me. It's the foundation of good decisions. No one ever made a great decision in a fear state. Never. So I'm really intentional about my tone, about owning my own mistakes out loud, and about making it normal to say, I'm not sure. I don't know. I say that a lot myself because things are changing so fast. In fact, I was so unsure and so I don't know that I went back to school. So I'll be the first to admit, the more I learn, the more I don't know. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? So really modeling for people that it's okay, but you've got to tell somebody. You can't not know and not share because you're afraid of someone figuring out that you don't know. That's not the way to go. Share, let people know, let people help you, reach out for help long before something breaks. And you can't do that in an environment where, people are on edge or they're fearful. And I never want people expending energy managing my reactions. How many of us have seen people in the workforce expending energy trying to manage the emotions of the person they report to? That's just such a waste, and that's horrible. I see that, and I don't want anyone on my team to do that. So I don't want to have reactions that need to be managed. I don't want to hide problems either, because I have these brilliant people around me, because the smartest leaders hire people that are smarter than them. So you have all these brilliant individuals around you. Bring up the problems, actively engage to get their ideas. I want the energy going into thinking and creativity and care for our clients and for each other, and not fear for oneself.
Tamara, give us, let's dive into that just a little bit more, purely from a practical nature. Can you think of a time where your clinical background, your choice not to come at events, good or bad, from the perspective of fear, has made a huge difference in your culture?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they're so popular now, TV shows showing the emergency department. And I think so everybody has an idea from Hollywood of the fear, the humiliation and shame that can happen, say, even in an emergency department, when someone carries out something incorrectly or they answer the wrong answer. And unfortunately, those cultures still exist within healthcare facilities. And those are sick cultures, which is funny enough that they're sick cultures in a supposedly an environment that wants health. But those are also adrenaline filled and also legacy cultures where you're forcing people to never sleep. You have, your residents and interns that are basically making life and death decisions without any sleep, which is, I don't know why we still have that going on. It doesn't need to be that way anymore. It's legacy and it's broken. So one of the things I carry straight from the hospital into my company, when I wanted to create something different, is the idea of the structured debrief. Because after we would have something negative occur, an incident report was filled out. Obviously, the hospitals always were worried about risk mitigation strategies. So we would have to deconstruct it and walk through what actually happened, what was supposed to happen, what happened, what hurt, what do we need to do in the future, what can we do next time. So this focus was really on learning and not on scapegoats initially, but always in a giant facility like the hospital, there always has to be a scapegoat, especially if litigation is going to go forward. So the nice thing about not working in the healthcare facility right now is that this is my company and I don't have to create scapegoats. Instead, it's a much different environment. We do a version of this debrief at Thulium. So when a conflict surfaces, and they do happen, shocker, right? You thought we were perfect. We have no internal conflicts. Well, when you get a group of people together and you're working together all the time and very closely, even in families, if any of you have a family, conflict can surface. So when conflicts arise or a project goes sideways, what we do is we schedule a short kind of a retrospective debrief with a few simple questions and one rule. We talk about behaviors and symptoms, but never about someone's character. It's really, really important. There would be no attacking. And this kind of structure, I think, really lowers the emotional temperature. People know we're not going to ambush them or attack their motives. We genuinely are trying to understand cause and effect. And over time, I think that this builds a culture where issues surface earlier and where feedback, even the hard stuff, even hard feedback can begin to feel like a part of the work rather than a personal indictment, because this is what we do. This is a part of who we are.
It really does build, and you talk about calm and consistency and clarity. And if someone, again, is fearful of how they're going to be attacked, and they did have a part of this issue that got forgotten or missed or whatever, the fear is going to be front and center, and they're not going to be present, and they're not going to be working on solutions as much as maybe dealing with the defensive reactions that we can all have in that scenario. I want to go to a slightly different place because I'm intrigued at how you describe Thulium as sitting at the intersection of social media, data, and AI. How do you bring an ethical should we lens rather than just can we into your culture and decision making?
Oh, that is a super question because it couldn't be more critically important right now with all the new tech coming out, all the new applications, the way the algorithms work on all of these platforms. This is a really, really important question. And with what we do, we really do sit at that intersection of like this 24/7. Think of media and the power that media has. Data and how data can be manipulated to tell whatever story you want it to tell. We all know that data can be manipulated. And artificial intelligence, which is changing, minute by minute, and what it can do, it's changing. So yeah, we're surrounded, by all these things that are technically possible and even perhaps incentivized by some of the algorithms, but not always wise or ethical. And I think we have to I think those of us who had a lot of experience and maybe some age behind us, bringing some discernment and wisdom to our practice, especially in these days, and asking, is this wise? Is it ethical? Not, can we do it? So we've built a habit of asking, should we? And before we get excited about the newest shiny object, about, we could find out that information. We could harness this. Before we do that, before we get excited, we have to say, is this right? So that question is as operational for us as budget and timeline. I think it's really important because nowadays there's a lot of things that can be done behind the scenes. So practically, what does this mean? It means we have to examine the human impact of what we're doing at scale. So we're involved in media. So are we amplifying fear? I don't believe that that's the right thing ever. I think that's wrong. We don't amplify fear. Are we eroding trust? Trust is a commodity we have very little of right now. And I think playing a hand in eroding trust is not wise. It's not correct. It's not ethical. Another one is, are we using people's data in ways they would recognize as fair and transparent? I mean, that's a really big deal right now. Think about social media. People are just giving it all away. They're hitting the I accept. They don't read through those, what is it, like 50,000 pages before you can use an app or anything. And you have to click, yes, I accept. I don't think people really understand what they're accepting and how their data is being used. So I do. I've been to Harvard and studied this stuff. So it's really scary, the things that we're giving away. And we're giving away in exchange for being able to post about our life. This is not a fair trade. So these are tactics we will not use in applications that we will not run, even if we know they would perform well with the algorithms, because they cross a very important line. And we talk openly with the team about these types of decisions when people see that ethics is not just something that I talk about on stage or I write about, but it's something that governs our yeses and nos, and it shifts our company culture. I think our team members feel empowered to raise their own, hey, should we? Questions, they're empowered to do that. And they know that the long-term trust always outranks short-term spikes.
So Tamara, let me spin that a little bit. Let's just say you have one of your big enterprise clients and they know exactly what they want you and your team to do using AI, but it falls outside your values-based culture and your infrastructure, your ethical infrastructure. Well, what would happen if you had to tell one of your big enterprise clients, I'm sorry, that is outside our boundaries and it's just not something we're willing to do?
It's such a great question, because I feel the blessing of working with enterprise is enterprise has very robust legal teams. And so the beauty of working with enterprise is they're less likely to ask you to do something like that than, say, a small company or a medium-sized company that doesn't have a legal department who just wants to win. Right. So
interesting.
The enterprise level clients, they do have a strong legal department, and they are very mindful of data and how people's data is used and on the back end. And so, if we were ever to be asked by any kind of client to do something like that, we just wouldn't take it on. I certainly don't want the legal ramifications for it. But also on top of it, what kind of message am I sending to my team when I say, no, we don't do this, but for this contract, for this amount of dollars, we will. To me, that's compromising your integrity.
Yeah.
And, I didn't start my own company and build this organization so that I'd have to compromise my integrity. Yeah. I did it so I could just be who I am and surround myself with people who also want to bring their whole selves to work, including their morality, their sense of good. They're wanting to support and uplift others, to bring communities together, to help organizations get their good message out. And all the clients that we work with have really great purposes, really good messages. So I feel like that then trickles down to us and what we do, and gives our individual team members a sense that they are doing something good with their time, that your energy is going toward helping and being of service. So yes, Mark, there are clear lines we would never cross. We will not design campaigns that deliberately mislead, that prey on people's anxieties in manipulative ways, or even this is one that I've said no to, and I'm very vocal about this because you're seeing this on social media a lot. There are apps out there that simulate human intimacy using AI in contexts where people believe they're talking to a real person. So I know you've seen this on social where someone posts comments and it looks like a real person is posting those comments, and they're even answering comments, but those are AI. That is not a real person posting those comments. But what they're doing is they are cooking the books, so to speak, in that the algorithm notices when you make a comment, right? So the more that you engage, it rewards you for your engagement. But then when you use an app to do that engagement for you, when you're tricking others into believing that you actually engaged, I just feel that's wrong. And on some level, it almost feels laughable, because I think in the future, does that mean that no one's actually going to be talking on social media? It'll just be an app talking to an app, talking to an app, talking to an app. And then what happened? Where's the social in that media? It's gone. And this is, it's crazy. So we won't use those things. And, in some cases, that's meant turning down projects or having to reshape them significantly. So, these decisions do two important things culturally, I think. So first, they give the team a sense of moral coherence, which I think is really important. What we say we value externally is what we live internally. So we want to be in alignment with that, right? Just don't you want to go to sleep at night knowing that you are a coherent person within yourself? You're not living a different life. And second, I think that this creates psychological permission, right? So when someone on the team feels, this request from someone doesn't feel right, because do you think I'm going to know all the requests that come across? I won't. I'm not sitting in those seats. And so if my team member feels empowered to go, hey, you know what? I'm going to just run this up the flagpole to those above me to find out, is this okay? Should we be doing this? They know that it is safe to question. It is very safe to question. In fact, we want them to question. And I think this is powerful, because you get more eyes on potential ethical blind spots, and you build a culture where people believe their conscience does have a place in the workplace.
Well, and what I love about that is that alignment means that they can trust that, yes, to some degree, you all have defined over the course of your work what doing the right thing is, but there's also new stuff coming along and new requests coming along, and you still have to come back and look at it from that coherence. What are our values? What are my values? Is the client going to hate us in a year because we said yes to this, interesting new tweak? So I think that is powerful for you and your team. And I do want to look at social media is 24/7. It feels like it's 48/7. It is a demanding field, and you've got your staff not running 48/7, but they're running pretty hard. How do you keep folks focused upon, here's what we've promised, here's the deadline, here's what we have promised to our clients for this week or this, Wednesday, whatever? How do you sustain performance in Thulium in the midst of all of these demands?
Yeah, great question, because, social media is a field that is always on. It's 24/7. So it's really easy to normalize constant urgency and call it high performance. However, we have chosen to treat sustainable performance almost like an engineering problem, right? So in practice, this looks like cycles instead of perpetual crisis. You're going to burn people out with perpetual crisis, right? And then if you do have perpetual crisis and a real crisis happens, then it's not a crisis anymore, because this is the same as usual, right? So we plan in waves, we build in buffers, and we rotate particularly intense responsibilities instead of just parking them on one person indefinitely. Culturally, we also try to celebrate pacing and honesty. Again, this honesty is really important here, and not just heroics. So, because heroics can get you into trouble. And we have learned from those mistakes in the past, where someone doesn't want to admit that that they're drowning, right? And so what we've said over and over again is, tell us, let us know. And then the response of, well, I didn't want to bother you, is so annoying, because what we've said over and over again is, please please bother us. Because what happens is when you don't bother us and you go into heroics, I can do this, and then you're drowning, is it creates a thunderstorm of more problems. It would be way better to bother us because it's not bothering us, but in the mind, it may look, oh, well, I can't ask them. Yes, you can. We've told you to. We have to have this culture of saying, my plate's full here, and I don't think that I can either take this on or finish this. But say it early. Don't do it after you've already drowned. And then once we've gotten somebody to that level and they start asking for help and they do start bothering us, that to me is when I know that mature leadership in them is beginning to develop. And that they are understanding why heroics is not helpful. And over time, when people see that they won't be punished for telling the truth about capacity, they're much more transparent. And then we can actually plan ahead better. And planning ahead is important because, like you've said, this is an always on environment. And for me, I think the bulk of our responsibility where we sit is planning, being able to plan to be able to get the work done, run those campaigns. And it's a quieter form of performance the way we do it, but I think it's far more reliable.
That makes so much sense. Tamara, you've deliberately defined your culture at Thulium in terms of pillars like servant purpose and making respect just as important as results, which Chris and I preach all the time. And in our casual and candid conversations, you reiterate how important that is to you and your team. What are those pillars and how do they guide your day-to-day operations?
Yeah, I love the pillars. And thank you for being the one that actually introduced me to these pillars so long ago, because they're really important and they do help with decision making. But I think in addition to that, the servant purpose is really important, especially nowadays with artificial intelligence. We're beginning to see more and more of what we thought was uniquely human being replaced. And one of the things that I'm steeped in artificial intelligence and public purpose is that when you take someone's purpose away from them, you're taking away their identity, you're taking away their reason for being, their waking up in the morning, how they feel about themselves, how they define themselves. So purpose is so important. And I think we have to really look at how we are going to cultivate purpose in a world where machines are taking more and more of the things that we thought only we could do. So first of all, servant purpose is really, really critical because for me, it helps me to motivate my teams that what they do matters. They matter. And that nothing within our organization, no task, even if I have to take out the trash, no task is less than another because it has a purpose. And that purpose always serves the collective, right? And this purpose that we need to embody and realize that when we're having a tough day, when that campaign is really tasking all of us, when things are going sideways, is to realize down deep inside, we're helping our client. We're helping them to get their message out in a better way, create a community, do something that moves people. And in that, whatever someone's job is, whatever it is, even if it's just posting something that someone else has already written within our organization, well, if you don't post it, it's not going to be helpful. So see how important that is? Never think that anything you do is too rote or routine, that you have a purpose. And I think in helping people remember how important they are, remember where they fit within the organization, and that no one can do what they do without everyone else, that we are simply helping our customers use social media and AI in ways that improve their lives, their conversations. And it's not just numbers on a report. From that, here's where our pillars flow. And I had to give you that backstory because purpose is so important to me. I think you don't become a nurse because you want to rule the world. I think you become a nurse because you really want to make people feel better. their lives better. You want to be a helper, a support, to raise people up. And that's never left. So the pillars for me, and I could have many, but I'm going to pick these three, is the respect, clarity, and courage. And respect means that we honor people's time. We honor who they are. We honor their dignity. We honor their boundaries. We honor whether they're colleagues or clients. It doesn't matter. And clarity is so important because it means we don't make people guess. That's the worst. So we're very explicit about expectations, priorities, and feedback. Feedback's important. And courage is in there because it means that we are willing to say the hard things, especially if we're going to talk about ethics in today's world. It's not always going to be popular, right? But courage means we're willing to stand. Will you stand? Will you say the hard thing? Kindly, of course. Please use your voice with this. And only when it serves to protect this purpose. If it does not serve, then you don't need to say anything. But if it doesn't serve, it's not courageous either. So, as a leader, I look at these pillars as my decision filters. So when I'm unsure what to do, I easily can grab these pillars and ask, which option best honors our purpose and our pillars. And this might mean slowing down a project or rejecting a project or pushing back on a request or having a really candid conversation instead of letting something slide. And so the more consistently that I make choices through this lens, the easier it becomes for everyone else to do the same.
Wonderful. Completely wonderful. How do you make the clarity, courage, pillars, respect, critically important, tangible to your clients? Now, it may be subtle, it may be indirect, it may be them observing. And oftentimes in our experience, these clients, especially on the enterprise level, it's a big machine. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of folks doing multiple things. And they may not pay much attention to what Thulium is doing and how that team operates and how did that problem get addressed and how open they were about, my bad, we're going to fix it, etc. How do you help your clients handle their own mistakes and maybe even give them feedback about things that they might consider? For example, you all at Thulium are very, very strong at humanizing messages that are on social media. And again, in a world of KPIs, I may not be thinking about humanizing messages, using terms that help people feel comfortable with, this is about my peers, this is about my team, and I can, move my team forward with this. So how do you make those concepts relevant to your clients in communicating messages that are maybe more humanizing, providing feedback that is maybe humanist-based, etc.?
Yeah, power-packed questions. So first of all, the first part of your question, obviously we don't have a respect index dashboard or things like that. But we do treat respect and psychological safety as observable, right? These are observable, trackable realities. So we do look for behaviors and outcomes. We have control internally over that. We don't have control externally of any of those types of interventions. So we're looking for behaviors and outcomes. And the types of behaviors we're looking for within our organization where we do have control over how people treat each other is, are they interrupting, constantly in meetings? Are they letting someone else finish? Are they listening? Are they building each other up? One huge rule we have is no side talking. So two employees can't be talking and complaining about another employee or about, any of the people they report to, they need to speak directly to the person. And if they sidestep and try to complain without going directly to that person, we will shuffle them back to what they need to do is address them first. And then obviously there's ways that we go if that doesn't work, but there's no side talking, there's no teaming up, there's no double teaming, there's none of that. So we're measuring behaviors. We're also measuring, are they starting to talk about when they're stuck? Are they asking for help when they need it? Do problems only surface at the 11th hour? Because that's not cool. That's actually the worst. Again, please bother us. Let us know. Do people feel safe disagreeing with, whatever? Even if it's something that I want or I've said I want, disagree. If people feel like they can bring up another way, that's important, because to me, that means that they feel safe. So internally, we can monitor those behaviors. Externally, what can we do to support our people with those pillars is probably the better question. If someone's making a mistake within a client organization, first of all, how would I know? Second of all, if I do know, and if it has something that impacts our people, if it's not the fault of one of our people and they're pointed at as if it is their fault, we use the exact same process with our clients and go back to them in a kind fashion and stand up and support our team member. So we do that. We do support our team members. And the thing is, our team members know that we support them and back them. And, kindness goes a long way, because even when you're approaching the client, when something's been blamed on someone that didn't actually do anything wrong, oftentimes it comes from a place of reaction, panic. And when everything is calmed down and when we approach the process and look at the process, we then can model that also for them and go, hey, we can be helpful. Hey, next time this happens, what kind of process is involved, and how can maybe we be involved in this process to be an extra check, an extra, eyes, extra ears. And again, trying to be of service and be helpful and model, because it's not our family, that makes sense. So how we treat our family and how we treat our family in front of someone else is really, really important. So we have those vital signs, we have those behaviors, we have the psychological safety that we're looking at. As far as humanizing social media, that is a really, really important aspect, because again, there's fake humanizing on social media, and hopefully people are beginning to realize that, but it's becoming more and more difficult now that we have artificial intelligence that is able to really do quite an exquisite job of sounding incredibly human. So our internal culture of humanity absolutely shapes how we counsel clients on their external presence, because we practice candor and care inside of our company. We're quick to spot when a brand's voice sounds maybe sterile or performative. It's not really sounding authentic. And we encourage clients to talk more like people and less like press releases. Tell real stories, right? Acknowledge uncertainty. Respond in ways that sound like an actual human being and not a legal, document. So, because people can spot that a mile away. And on social media, I think it's even more apparent. So it's just encouraging them to build community versus numbers. And so often that we ask is, if you said this to somebody or you read this, would you trust more or less by what you read? So the simple test really comes straight out of our cultural DNA, because we value that honest, nuanced conversation internally. We advocate for that same thing externally to our clients. And I think our clients appreciate that. I think we are, brought in and we work so closely with their teams to really support that and be that. And I think that our clients want that, and they are trying to build communities. They are trying to build brand advocates. They are trying to establish their thought leadership. So they're looking for that from us. So it's easy for us because no one's fighting us on that. That's why we've been brought in Just like I would imagine when folks bring you guys in, they're not going to fight you on culture. They brought you in because they've identified a problem and they want that. So it makes your job easy. So I think humanizing social media makes our job easy because they are looking for ways to build those communities, to build that trust, to build their thought leadership. And that's what we're really good at. And that's why they brought us in. So, I think that that's really important. And I think that, we've had this shift where old time advertising was a broadcast, right? And I think that we're moving away from broadcast and we're moving into collaborative communities. And that really starts with a core question of asking, what do you want to say? It's social media. What do you want to say? Is there a message that you want to give? What conversation do you want to host? If you're the thought leader, what conversations do you want to host? And with whom? Because again, do you want a bunch of fake followers? Do you want just the numbers? Because there's a lot of fake followers out there, and you're not going to get to your conversions. You're not going to get to your actual real KPIs if you're just only looking at numbers. And so who is your target? Who do you want to influence? Who do you want to create in your communities? Who do you want to have conversations with what you post? This is really important. And I think a lot of times people forget about the who that they're addressing. And instead, they're just looking for the likes and their reshares and someone to land on their page.
Tamara, do you as CEO, let's just say, it's been a long week and Chris and I have loved getting to know you personally and professionally. There's probably no person on the planet busier than you are. Do you ever run across a situation where you have an internal issue or you have a client issue and you just go, you know what? Not today. I'm not dealing with this crap today. and if you do, within your pillars that you've established, how do you personally handle this? Or instead of looking at a person and just going, really today, right? You can go back to those pillars and go, you know what? People expect me to act or react in a certain way, and I need to collect myself right now and leave the morning's baggage behind and handle this the way I would want them to handle this. What does that look like for you?
I think it's again to that respond, don't react, taking a beat. And I actually think I learned this most through being a parent. Because nothing can really get you like one of your kids, especially in those teen years, talk about, they know you so well and those triggers are right there available so much more than someone in a workplace. And learning how to be a parent that earns respect through modeling the kind of behavior they want to see, even when it's not showing up in the child. And that's really tough. And if anyone knows my experience working with a child that is on the spectrum and, behavioral issues were significant and just really having to be consistent, clarity was huge. Consistency is huge. You absolutely need to be consistent. You cannot be one way when you're feeling good and rested and another way when you're feeling scattered and tired. You have to be consistent, even when it means inside you want to fall apart. You absolutely cannot. And I do think that is parenting. And I also think it's emergency nursing. I have seen things that, PTSD is real. I have seen horrible things. I have seen accidents with decapitations. I have seen things that I've had to put together that nobody would want to see, but you have to hold it together. You cannot fall apart. Later you can, It's the same in the workplace. Later I can, but not now, not in this moment, and not in front of these people, but later. Not in front of this kid, not in front of this thing, not now, but later. And I think it's just cultivating that ability to respond. Remember who you are. Remember who they are. They are not their behaviors. None of us are our behaviors, and none of us are defined by our worst action we've ever done. Thank goodness. So I think always keeping that. And for me, I guess that is a spiritual walk for me, is remembering to see the other and to realize that most of the time I'm seeing a reflection of myself. If I don't like something, I need to question, where is this in operation in me? As ugly as it is, as much as I don't want to see it, if it's really getting under my craw, it's probably because this is in operation somewhere else in me. And so for me, if I'm feeling triggered, feeling exhausted, and feeling frustrated, to me, it's take a beat, go inside, remember these important truths, and come back to respond. And there are times where I did react. I didn't respond. I was a bad mother. I was not a kind partner. I was not a fabulous boss. There are times when I fail, and more times than I would like to be admitting to. However, humility is important. Going back to your child, going back to your colleague, your coworker, your report, going back to your significant other and saying, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And I think it's really important to realize that we are all fallible and that we all make mistakes, and that it's important to say you're sorry. It's important to come clean when those things happen, because always you are modeling for everyone around you the person that you're hoping to be one day, even if it didn't show up today. So I think there's a bumper sticker that I loved, which is something to the effect of, I'm going to botch this terribly, but it's like, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am.
Exactly. And
always
sometimes
aspiring to be that. But I think that's my best answer, is that I don't always achieve it elegantly, but I'm always trying to do better next time.
Well, you're one of the most gracious and kind and smart humans that I know. And I think Mark would probably agree. So first of all, thank you for sharing your more than just Thulium experiences in our conversation today. But I think what is intriguing to me, and I think our listeners, is where might they find out some more information about changing the way they are presenting themselves on social media, and how can they maybe be more respectful, clear, and of service, God forbid, in their social media communications, and what kind of resources might Thulium have for them?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot on our website. If you go to the blog section, we have a lot of free information about how to build community, how to do social media great on the different platforms, what the different platforms are looking for, how to storytell, how to do all of these things that we talk about. We give a lot of information for free because, a lot of small organizations may not be able to afford a social media team. So what we try to do is just put our best foot forward in offering all the knowledge that we have in case somebody would just like to take it for free. So go to our website, which is thulium.co, not .com. And certainly if anyone's listening and they're interested in all of this and they want to connect on LinkedIn, send me a connection request, but make sure you say that you heard this podcast, because I get lots of them and I don't connect with people unless there's really, truly a connection there. And if you follow Mark Babbitt or Chris Edmonds, there's a connection there, and I will definitely be honored to be connected with you. So there's some that. So thank you.
Mark, what would you add, sir?
Just Tamara, our time has come to an end, but what a refreshing conversation this has been, and what a refreshing approach to business you bring, not just to Thulium, but your clients and your community and those you serve. And so it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Well, there's certainly opportunities for you all to watch this on video, listen to it on audio. We would love to hear what you think about Tamara's thinking and values and pillars. And every Tuesday, we're going to bring you more guests like Tamara, maybe not exactly like Tamara, but pretty close. And we'd love to hear what you think about the Mastering Workplace Culture podcast. So we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Mark, you get to applaud.
Yay. Oh, I get to applaud. Okay.
This has been Mastering Workplace Culture. No jargon, no corporate fairy tales, just leaders who show their scars and celebrate their wins. Do something with what you heard today. Subscribe, share, take action. Creating a culture that equally values respect and results is your responsibility. Go own it. When you're ready to make that happen, we're here to help. We'll catch you in the next episode of Mastering Workplace Culture.